It's a warm welcome here in our studio in Sarakunda. This is Star TV News and I am Maimuna Fadera. In the headlines tonight, victory for Gambia as World Stop Court shames Myanmar by ordering Asian nation to stop alleged genocidal acts against Rohingya. Imam Babali says he will only forgive his torturers when they truly repent. Former IEC chairman Mustafa El Karayol is the first person to introduce on-the-spot counting. My father was arrested for praying Eid on a different date with Jammeh, revealed Sirif Abbas Haidara to the TRRC. On the international scene, ICJ orders Myanmar to take steps to protect Rohingya. Trump focuses on impeachment, harangues Democrats at Davos. They are still robbing us, says Anglo-Lebanese, as they reject new government. Those were the headlines, and now the news in details. The Gambia case against Myanmar at the International Court of Justice got off to a good start after the World Stop Court ordered Myanmar to take measures to prevent genocidal acts against the Rohingya. The court on Thursday unanimously adopted provisional measures that required Myanmar to prevent genocide and take steps to preserve evidence. Bintakuli reports.
Myanmar's military committed extension atrocities against the Rohingya, including murder, rape, and erosion, that peaked during its last 2017 campaign of ethnic cleansing, forcing more than 740,000 Rohingya to flee to Bangladesh, according to Human Rights Watch. In September 2019, the United Nations-backed International Independent Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar found that the 60,000 Rohingya remaining in Myanmar may face a greater threat of genocide than ever, the group said. Thursday's development comes as a huge victory for the Gambia as the country and Myanmar lock horns after it files a case at the International Court of Justice last year, alleging that Myanmar was committing an ongoing genocide against its minority Muslim Rohingya population. Myanmar has since denied these allegations. For Star TV News, I am Bintakuli.
The Imam of Kanifing, Babali, said he can only forgive his perpetrators if they truly repent and regret their action against him after they subjected him to a 9-day continuous torture in December 2012 at the National Intelligence Agency NIA headquarters in Banjul. Ajakadi Sanyang files in this report.
He was later put in Communicado and Maltu prisons for more than 5 months before he was set up before the state broadcaster to public blame himself and not Jammeh for his detention. Lee, now serving as a commissioner at the National Human Rights Commission NHRC, was testifying before the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission TRRC on Wednesday. As far as he is concerned, the apologies he saw on TV screen at TRRC are not enough for him to consider. I am ready to forgive, but for somebody who asked for repentance, he said. At this point, the lead counsel, Esa Fall, interjected, stating that Omar Jallo alias Oya, a member of the junglers who confessed to have tortured him, had repented and sought for forgiveness, but Lee denied. Oya did not seek for forgiveness. If coming here and saying I forgive is what you thought of forgiveness, it is not, he said. He stated that victims including him are not happy anytime they come face to face with their perpetrators who are still going about their businesses. The people who did all these things are still handling big positions here and we are meeting with them. We sometimes meet with them in the airplanes. What went wrong in this country is too much. They continue to provoke their victims. he told the TRRC. However, he assured that he is willing to take part in reconciliation with perpetrators and he could forgive if they take the right direction. If the people who victimized me take the right direction, as well as the government that offended me and the government that inherited, since the government is continuity, take the route as Quran states, we will forgive because we are religious leaders, he assured. Meanwhile, recounting his ordeals, Lee recalled the night of 2nd December 2012 when he arrived home only to meet with 2 NIA operatives who arrested him. He was taken to the NIA headquarters in Banjul, where he was allegedly subjected late long nights torture by the ninja-looking torture squad. As he was initially put in a cell, he remembered being taken out of his cell around 1 a.m. to a very dark room where he was greeted by a heavy slap from behind as he entered. Somebody came and slapped me from behind until his fingers touched my eyes. When he slapped me, he told me, "You are calling yourself an imam." I responded by telling him that I am not calling myself an imam, but I am imam. He told me here it's augur before God. They started beating me, stripped me up naked like how I was born. There was no part of my body that they didn't beat. They kicked me while some will snuff out their cigarettes. They would relax a bit and then restart the beating. They would pour cold water on my body, he narrated. According to him, he sustained injuries on his body for months without medication while under detention. He said some of the laceration marks could still be visible on his body. They started asking me why I hate Yaya Jammeh. I responded with a question, did I hate him? He told me, you want to tell me you are more educated than Abdoulaye Fati and Imam Muhammad Lamin Toure. Why are you the only one talking? These are the types of questions they asked. They used sticks and chains to beat me up, he told the commission. They came back around 1 a.m. again the following day and they did the same thing. You can't even know how long these beating sessions last. They would beat you until you collapsed. They will go and drink alcohol and come back. Sometimes they will take 2 to 3 sessions in a night. At some point of questioning, he recalled being bombarded with questions regarding his source of income, cars while it was put to him that he was financed by the American embassy. These are the type of questions they asked. It was systematic, and it went on up to the 6th day. They were doing the same thing. The 6th day, they told me if you want to leave, you must mention some names as people who implicated you in doing you resulting to this trouble. The names they listed for him to confirm were Wankeba Toure, Omar Ahmadou Jallow OJ, Abdurrahman Bari, and the American embassy. According to him, he always refused to accept. He testified that the beating continued up consecutively up to the 9th day when he was released and rearrested before leaving Banjul. He considered that the release could have been their strategy to say that he was released and not in their custody again, which the government eventually claimed later. He recalled being subjected to further tortures such as masking him with a plastic bag, curtailing his breathing as they forced him to talk but he continued to refuse. With that plastic bag, they can take you anywhere and you cannot see, he said. After a long drive, he recalled being seated and the plastic bag was removed when he was again subjected to interrogation but he refused. He said they told him the place they took him was Bambadinka and that's where he's going to die if he fails to talk. Lee said after 5 months, he was released from Maltu where he was totally denied family and legal visits. He recalled being taken to a staged platform where Njogu Elba, former presidential affairs minister, received him along with Supreme Islamic Council leaders such as Imam Abdoulaye Fati and Imam Muhammad Lamin Toure, Banjul Muslim elders and Wen Ali Mboj. He said he was asked to praise and thank Jammeh for his humanitarian gesture for releasing him before the state television. For Star TV News, Ajakadi Sanya.
A former chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, Alhaji Mustafa El Karayel, has revealed to Star TV in a recent exclusive interview with Sarah Kamara on the Special One program that he is the first person to first introduce on-the-spot counting in Janjanbureh with the knowledge of Halifa Saleh.
You know, when was this counting on the spot introduced here by me again in Janjambure, a non-partisan chieftaincy election.
Okay.
If you go and ask, these party leaders don't know. The only person who knows about this is Halifa Saleh. Go and ask him. That's where I introduced it. It was non-party.
In Janjambure, it
In
was on the
Janjambure,
spot.
for that place, Same. For Same election, I did it. Very tough. I was threatened that if anything happened, they'll take me to jail. I insisted. We
Who
did it.
threatened you?
Huh?
Who threatened you?
The army at Farafenni called me. That the tension is very high. You don't stand under a political party. Gambians don't know that system. When there is a meeting, I go around, I provide vehicle for them, take them to the meeting. We all sit down, they get the crowd, they talk. I give everybody 15 to 20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes to talk, and then I transport them back. That's where Alhaji Mustafa Carroll introduced
On the spot.
counting on the spot. Halifa, now maybe these guys will, but Halifa
He knows.
knows this about this.
You can watch the full exclusive interview this coming Sunday at 1 p.m. Abbas Haidara explained at the TRRC how his father, Sheikh Sirif Muhyiddin Haidara, was arrested alongside Alkalu Buya Toure of Dasilame Sangajor, Fonyi Kansala, because they prayed Eid at a different date with former President Yahya Jammeh. Our TRRC correspondent Zainabu Jassi reports.
According to the witness, he had that Supreme Islamic Council's leader said they've made efforts to ensure the country pray together, but couldn't happen, and they called on the former president to intervene and help them control the situation. This led to the announcement made by former President Jammeh on the 28th July 2014 that no one will pray after the date Supreme Islamic Council announced. Sirif Haidara says another announcement was made by the president saying that from Kalaji to Fatoto can pray, but from Kalaji to Greater Banjul area nobody is allowed to pray, which was a charge for his father because Jammeh sent people to his father for him to pray for Jammeh to be a king. After the Eid, around 11 a.m., the Alkalo Boya Toure was arrested after his father was considered to be old, but his father was called to the Buyam police station where they gave their statements. Later on, they were moved to Sibanor Police, from there to Banjulining Police Station, where they spent 2 days. The following day, they were moved to the police headquarters to meet the Inspector General of Police. From there, they went to Supreme Islamic Council. The witness mentioned that Imam Abdullah Fatih, the former Imam of the State House, told his father that the government did not arrest him. It was the Supreme Islamic Council who arrested his father. Imam Fatih also told his father to admit that what he did was wrong for him to be released, but his father insisted. August 1st, 2014, the elders faced trial. The trial ended on May 2015. The elders were charged with 2 counts of criminal offense. One is disobedience of lawful order by the president and conspiracy to commit felony. To him, these were unlawful charges. The impact of the elders' arrest was a huge destruction on their families and followers. On his closing remarks, the witness said that he didn't trust the Supreme Islamic Council and he is afraid of them. He also requested for government to change the name of the Supreme Islamic Council and bring different people. Zainabu Jasseh, Star TV News.
We are going for a short break and we'll be back with international news. Welcome back after the short commercial break, and now the news beyond our borders. The Rohingya Muslim minority remain at serious risk of genocide, said the United Nations top court on Thursday as it ordered provisional measures against Myanmar. Myanmar had not proposed any measures aimed at ensuring the Rohingyas' right to exist, and conditions necessary for emergency measures to be taken in the country have been met, ruled the International Court of Justice ICJ. Al Jazeera's Navy Baker reports live at The Hague, while Tanvir Chowdhury reports from Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, home to hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees.
Well, let me start by giving you a bit of context. Last November, the Gambia brought this case against Myanmar. The Gambia had the backing of 57, largely Muslim countries in doing this. The country alleges that Myanmar has breached the UN Convention on Genocide, that all-important 1948 convention signed in the wake of the Second World War, not only to punish, but to prevent genocide from ever happening again. There was an earlier hearing in December, attended by the civilian leader of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi. She wasn't here today for this final result. But what the court has been asked to do is rule on two things: to say whether or not it has jurisdiction, and it has come back saying it does indeed have jurisdiction, meaning a genocide trial will take place. And secondly, it was asked by the Gambia too to impose something called provisional measures, which amounts to an emergency injunction to put the brakes on any form of genocidal violence. And what we've heard from the court a short while ago is that there are terms on what it wants Myanmar to do. It wants to make sure that its military and all irregular forces that work alongside it stop all acts of violence, including rape, the burning of villages, mass murder, the prevention of access to medicine. It has also asked Myanmar to preserve all evidence when it comes to the ongoing trial, the future trial of genocide. And there are also further terms when it comes to the timing as well. It wants Myanmar to report back 4 months from today, and then every 6 months going forward, to show exactly what it's doing to the international community, to prove that it is actually living up to what the ICJ, the UN's highest court, has now imposed upon it.
Does Myanmar have to follow this ruling, or is it merely symbolic?
Well, that's the problem. The ICJ, despite the fact that it's described as the world court, the world's highest court, this ruling is binding, but it cannot be enforced. That's the problem. And in the past, other countries have simply ignored them. But what can be done in terms of escalating pressure on Myanmar is it could, in theory, take things all the way to the UN Security Council. But given the makeup of the UN Security Council, with the likes of China and Russia being sympathetic towards Myanmar, the thought of the possibility of any serious resolution being slapped upon Myanmar is somewhat dwindles. In that respect, an awful lot of faith and trust, I suppose, is being put in Myanmar to act off its own back. And given that Aung San Suu Kyi came here in person in December, something that she didn't have to do, does show to some extent that she respects the jurisdiction of the court. But whether or not they will actually act upon what the court has imposed upon Myanmar is a different question entirely. The fact that these timeframes of 4 months and 6 months checkups has been imposed at all implies that the court really wants to see some movement from Myanmar's leadership.
Al Jazeera's Neve Barker reporting live there from The Hague. Let's go to Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, where Al Jazeera's Tanvir Chowdhury is right now. I know the ruling came out, within the last 30, 40 minutes or so, Tanvir, so perhaps a little bit early, but what's been the reaction there to this?
Well, so far I haven't got a chance to talk to anybody, but last few days we've been talking to many of the camp residents, the community leaders. We asked them hypothetically, what if the ruling is in favor of the Rohingyas? And they said that we welcome this. I mean, it's very much waiting for a long time. We want some sort of justice. So this would be very much welcoming news to them, as well as for Bangladesh government and Bangladesh itself, which has been hosting over nearly a million refugees for over years now. So they would welcome this because they've been persuading the international community to insert pressure on Myanmar and to acknowledge the fact that atrocities being committed on the other side, which is why so many influx took place in 2017 and onwards. Even now, on and off, a lot of Rohingya start trickling down on the border because of the atrocities still been going on there. The Fortified Rights and Human Rights Body just a week back put in its report that about 125,000 Rohingyas are in internment camp. Many of them are coerced to accept this national verification card, which is nothing more than a card that says they're Muslim Bengalis. It doesn't verify anything else. So this would be symbolically a big gesture for the Rohingya community here, as well as for the Bangladesh government and the nation itself, because they've been trying to put this across to the international community. What it will do in tangible terms is the next question. Will it facilitate a quicker repatriation for the Rohingyas? We don't know. I mean, will it encourage many of the nations to actually impose sanction on Myanmar? Will it empower the UN and other bodies to do something more about this? This we'll have to see at Trump's come, whether Myanmar abide by this ruling, you know. So in the end, it's very symbolic. It's a moral victory. If nothing else, it's a psychological victory. And Rohingyas will be very much welcoming. We'll bring you more from the camp in coming days.
The International Court of Justice is set to rule on a request for emergency measures aimed at preventing further acts of violence against Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. The Gambia filed a lawsuit in November accusing Myanmar's military of committing an ongoing genocide on the minority group. More than 700,000 Rohingya flew to neighboring Bangladesh in the aftermath of the violence 3 years ago. Al Jazeera's Navy Baker reports from The Hague.
It is the world's highest court, formed in the aftermath of the Second World War to end state abuses of power. Myanmar stands accused of perhaps the greatest abuse, the genocide of its own people. Last month, its civilian leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, once a human rights icon, arrived at the International Court of Justice to contest the claims. The case against her government was brought by the Gambia on behalf of dozens of Muslim countries.
Inaction means that more people are being killed, more women are being ravaged, and more children are being burnt alive.
The court heard allegations of atrocity after atrocity. Myanmar's military is accused of mass murder, rape, and the destruction of Rohingya Muslim communities. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate watched on, a woman detained for years by Myanmar's military, now defending them. She doesn't have control over the army, but Suu Kyi's personally accused of failing to hold it to account. She called for the case to be dropped.
Myanmar requests the court to remove the case from its list.
Myanmar says the raids on Rohingya villages in Rakhine State in 2017 were legitimate counter-terrorism operations, a response to attacks by armed Rohingya on government security posts. 3 years on, are more than 700,000 Rohingya refugees languish in camps across the border in Bangladesh. The Gambia believes Myanmar is trying to wipe out an entire ethnic group. The court could take many years to reach a final ruling on genocide.
The type of evidence that is needed to prove genocide is quite burdensome for applicant states like the Gambia, but it's also because the legal test that's needed to be met by the applicant state is also quite high. So the applicant, the Gambia, will have to show that there was specific intent to commit genocide.
On Thursday, the ICJ will say whether or not it has granted an emergency ruling known as provisional measures to prevent further acts of serious violence, including murder, rape, the burning down of villages, the prevention of access to medicine. One thing the court cannot do, though, is enforce its rulings. In the past, some countries have simply ignored them. This is not a criminal case. Charges won't be brought against individuals. That may come later at a different court. Nevertheless, Aung San Suu Kyi finds herself, together with Myanmar's military, the focus of serious allegations, accused of complicity in some of the world's worst crimes. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, The Hague.
White House officials who were hoping that U.S. President Donald Trump will highlight his achievements on trade were disappointed as the president turned the spotlight on his impeachment trial on his last day at Davos in Switzerland. He said he would like to attend the proceedings in person and boasted about withholding some evidence from the Democrats. Al Jazeera's Kimberly Halcott reports from Washington, D.C.
U.S. President Donald Trump returned home to Washington, ignoring reporters' questions about the ongoing Senate impeachment trial against him. But before leaving Davos, Switzerland, Trump, in his first press conference since the start of the trial, lashed out at his Democratic adversaries, calling them
major sleazebags.
His mindset focused on his defense. Trump told reporters he wanted to let members of his administration testify, like former National Security Advisor John Bolton, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and other top officials. He even floated the possibility of showing up himself.
I'd love to go. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be beautiful? I don't know. I'd sort of love to sit right in the front row and stare at their corrupt faces. I'd love to do it. I don't know. Don't keep talking because you may convince me to do it.
Trump seemed fixated on the trial back home, even as the White House hoped Trump would use the World Economic Forum to highlight accomplishments on trade. He appeared confident. Now, Democrats are accusing him of openly admitting he's withholding documents, one of the main allegations against Trump.
Good job, but honestly, we have all the material. They don't have the material.
Trump did discuss other topics, including a future trade deal with the European Union, and confirmed he's expanding his controversial travel ban, barring citizens of certain countries from entering the U.S.
We're adding a couple of countries to it. We have to be safe. Our country has to be safe.
Trump's ban sparked protests in the U.S. when he introduced it less than a week after taking office.
No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here.
Many called it a Muslim ban for targeting Muslim-majority countries like Iran and Somalia, and fought it in court. In 2018, the Supreme Court upheld the policy. The White House promises countries can be removed from the travel ban list if they step up security. But those headlines from Trump's impromptu press conference were once again overshadowed by the impeachment trial on Capitol Hill.
Mr. Chief Justice,
one Trump believes could shape his legacy.
When I finish, I think that this is going to go down as one of the greatest things I've done for our country.
Despite allegations to the contrary, Trump insists he's committed no wrongdoing, and efforts to remove him from office are an attempt to undo the results of the 2016 election and influence the next one. Kimberly Helkett, Al Jazeera, Washington.
A day after Lebanon formed a new government after months of political chaos, people lobbed stones at riot police. The cabinet met for the first time on Wednesday, promising to end the political and economic crisis. But the protesters say they have no faith in the government's reform efforts, and the new leaders are part of the same political elite they wanted out. Al Jazeera's Zaina Koduri reports from Beirut.
The people versus the state. Lebanon is in turmoil. Anti-establishment protesters briefly broke through security barriers outside Parliament Square. There is anger over a new government.
The
authorities are all liars, corrupt. We don't trust them. They can't deceive us. They can't form a government the way they want. They will not stay in power. We will not leave the streets. We are hungry and dead, and we have nothing left to lose.
For hours, anti-riot police tried to quell the unrest using tear gas and water cannons. But the few hundred young men were defiant, challenging security forces for hours, using rocks, stones, and firecrackers.
Central Beirut has been a battleground in the past week, but in the past few hours, the confrontations have turned more violent.
The most violent and aggressive since the protest movement against the political class began in October. Anger is escalating among the Lebanese, who are demanding a new leadership. They believe the new cabinet reflects the previous one. Protesters are not convinced politicians will carry out the needed reforms because that would mean losing access to the state's resources for personal gain. They also question whether the ministers appointed by politicians are able to hold corrupt officials accountable.
This government doesn't represent the Lebanese. The politicians brought their thieves to power thinking we wouldn't recognize, but they are both working together.
A little-known engineering professor and one-time minister is Lebanon's new prime minister. Hassan Diab was the choice of the country's ruling alliance. His cabinet lineup has been criticized for lacking change and being one-sided. It convened for its first session on Wednesday, and it now needs to work on an economic and financial program to reassure the Lebanese about their future. But President Michel Aoun also told the government they need to regain the confidence of the international community. Foreign support is needed to unlock billions of dollars in aid.
The international community cares about one thing today, is the ability of the Lebanese government to deliver on reforms. Will this team prove to be really independent? Will they prove that they are not prisoner of a system that put them in place?
Opponents of the political class are divided over the way forward. Some believe the movement should remain peaceful, while others support a violent campaign. For a second consecutive night, Yassin tried to convince the security forces to join their ranks and to stop protecting the elite, who he said are responsible for all their pain. Orders were carried out, and the unrest was eventually contained. Scenes like these are becoming more frequent. It's causing concern about the future of a country deeply divided, with those who are defending the status quo and those demanding a new Lebanon. Zana Khudr, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
And before we end the news, a recap of our main headlines. Victory for Gambia as World Top Court shames Myanmar by ordering Asian nation to stop a large genocidal acts against Rohingya. Imam Babili says he will only forgive his torturers when they truly repent. Former IEC chairman Mustafa El Karayol is the first person to introduce on-the-spot counting. My father was arrested for praying Eid on a different date with Jammeh, revealed Sirif Abbas Haidara to the TRRC. Well, that's all for this edition of the news. Please enjoy the rest of our programs and join us tomorrow for more news. Thank you.